Thank you. I'm actually a professor at NYU and author focused on global risk. I thought in 1 minute I would just summarize some of, well, my perspective and then offer a blind spot. Uh, Global risk boils down to the threats to our stability. We examine destabilizing factors geopolitically, politically, economically, and socially. And frankly, having worked on this topic, of course, climate change comes up quite a lot, but having worked on this for the last decade, I think everything that we're dealing with now, including the struggle with tackling the climate crisis, boils down to the fact that we are in a new era, the post-Cold War era, that was driven by the U.S. Global superpower is gone. It's ended. And with regards to that, I mean geopolitically, I think there's a big debate as to who is driving the world order. Which countries or country will be leading the world order and leading the charge on climate change. Secondly, we have confusion also, as you know, about our political system. Since the Arab Spring, from my perspective, we've been in a crisis of political legitimacy in most parts of the world, where citizens armed with social media have been challenging their governments, wondering if there could be a better way to govern or a more legitimate way. And this feeds into what I'll mention on climate blind spots in a second. Thirdly, globalization was supposed to be better for everybody and lift millions out of poverty. Obviously, we know that has had significant issues with rising inequality and certain politicians leveraging it strategically with respect to populism. Lastly, with respect to the post-Cold War era, we were supposed to be we were supposed to all get along. We were supposed to embrace human rights, liberalism, but we are in a post-Cold War era where we are confused, and there is a dangerous level of hate and extremism that has evolved from Islamophobia to an East Asian backlash, from Islamist extremism to Buddhist extremism and far-right extremism. So this is how I view the world, and if you take that into account and then reflect on climate, I think part of the reason, or rather what we will likely see this decade, is that a resurgent crisis of political legitimacy. We won't have leaders doing what we need to do. As we know, it's unlikely we'll meet the 1.5 degree target, from what I understand from the conversations last week. And I think it is possible, and this is the climate blind spot, that we might see a non-state actor. My guess would be an activist tech billionaire that tries to hack the planet. As you may be aware, billionaires, particularly in the US, especially during the Trump years, have become a lot more vocal. They have the means, they have the ability to execute in a way that, and drive change in a way that's quicker at times than government. And I think it's not inconceivable that whether it's Elon Musk or Bill Gates in particular, who has talked a lot about solar geoengineering as a way to cool the planet. And I would imagine this could be a significant risk. We don't know the consequences. I'm also on the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on Frontier Risk, and we had speculated that in the event that this happens, could this lead to unintended consequences, more conflict, a spillover effect on a neighboring country that leads to conflict, or could this be weaponized? Could this tool, this approach to tackling climate be weaponized and have even worse outcomes? So I would say going forward, I think on some level, some of these issues, particularly the climate crisis, we may be seeing these non-state actors trying to tackle it, and it could have unintended consequences. I emphasize billionaires because they have the means and the ability to execute, but that's what I would say. We need to pay attention. Should billionaires, citizens, and governments be part of a new social contract? Because they are often filling the policy gap.